evening, everyone. How are you all? What? Am I missing something? No. Okay, cool. My name's Denise, in case you haven't met me. I'm the pastor here. Love to meet you over a cuppa after the service, or maybe GYG. Gotta love GYG. It's getting a little cool up there, but the company is warm. Yes, we are in the middle of Acts, and yes, we are supposed to be reading up to chapter 18, and yes, we are only at 11, but, you know, we'll skip through and catch up, that's no problems. I don't know if it's just me, because I'm a very curious person, and I always have more questions than answers, but I don't know if this is something that you might have thought about at some point too, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Over the years, I've often wondered, and this has been like a long-standing question, like for decades. Does God plan our lives, or are we responsible for the path that we walk? See the difference? I don't know, what do you think? Anyone got any thoughts? Sorry?
Combination of both.
A combination of both? Yeah. Anyone else got any thoughts?
Yeah.
People are nodding. I sprung it on you, I know. It's curious to me. What do you think, Fee?
We've got free will, so if life was dictated and set out in a plan, there would be no need for free will.
Okay, yeah.
But at the same time, I think there are periods where we can feel very guided about the choices we can make that would be the right correct path to go, or a better path, actually.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, online people, you might not have heard that, but interested in your thoughts as well. But I'm not quite sure how we'll get them. Anyway, the thing is that those questions kind of prompted me to ask other questions, which are sort of about the way that you actually live life. And this is where it becomes less kind of ethereal, abstract questions and more, a little more concrete. Because I've often asked this question as I've gone through my life, and that is, do we sit back and wait for opportunities to come our way in life, or do we proactively make things happen? I don't know which side of that question you're on. And if we do decide to make a plan, like, okay, no, I know where I want to go, so I'm going to make a plan, and then you follow it, but then an interesting opportunity comes your way, do you abandon that well thought out plan and grab the opportunity with both hands, or do you turn down the opportunity because you've got this plan that you're trying to follow here? I've often sort of struggled with, like, which one do you go with? One of my favourite movies is called About Time. Familiar with it? Some people, yeah. It's about this guy called Tim. He learns from his father that all the men in his family have this genetic ability to travel back in time in their own lives, like on their own timeline. And so Tim goes back to past events in his life and he changes them to try to fix them. So the missed opportunities, the awkward moments that he feels embarrassed about, the things that went wrong. And of course, as you can imagine, he changes them and they all have unexpected and sometimes disastrous consequences. Anyway, I became obsessed. I love this movie, and I became obsessed for quite some time with the song that plays as the credit rolls in this movie. It's called The Luckiest by Ben Folds. And the first lines go like this. I don't get many things right the first time. Maybe it's because, I don't know, that sort of resonated with me. I don't get many things right the first time. In fact, I'm told that a lot. And I know all the wrong turns, the stumbles and falls, brought me here. Well, I just couldn't stop thinking about that. I played this song to death. Because, see, I used to naively assume that my plan for my life would be the best life that I could live if I just planned it and was able to somehow make it happen. As a young adult, I thought that I knew what I wanted in my life and that would be the way to go, the best life. You kind of think you know what a good life for you will look like. You think you know what's going to make you happy. And you have all these dreams and hopes, and if you're a proactive person, then, you take steps to try and make those dreams a reality. But of course, those of you who are, older than 25, 30, know, of course, that life doesn't go to plan. It just doesn't. Sometimes it does, but when you look back over your life, you realise that most of it didn't go to plan. Unexpected opportunities arise. Tragedy happens. You fail an exam and that changes your intended career path. Or you win an award that changes your intended career path. You meet someone that changes the path of your life, sometimes in positive ways, sometimes in negative ways. You win money or you lose money. You have life-changing health issues. See, we think that we're in control of our lives, but actually much of life is outside of our control. We live with this illusion of control because life is mysterious. And as I said, we're right in the middle of the book of Acts. We're right at the beginning of the story. We're right in the middle of the story, but right back at the beginning of the story of Acts, if you've been here for a while and you've been reading through Acts, you'll remember that Jesus told his followers that they would be witnesses, his witnesses, in Jerusalem, in Judea and Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the earth. Well, do you know, they actually did a pretty good job in Jerusalem, witnessing. Jesus sent the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, and all these miraculous things happened. Peter gave a stellar sermon to the people in Jerusalem, and heaps of them decided to join this Jesus movement. Some of them were actually thrown in prison by the religious authorities because those religious authorities didn't really like being usurped by this bunch of uneducated hicks. But that didn't stop them. The believers developed this amazing community where they all cared for one another. Some problems arose from time to time, but when that happened, the leaders called everybody together and they brainstormed, a bit like we did a few weeks ago in our congregational feedback meeting, and they came up with a solution that everyone was happy with. So the witness in Jerusalem, I have to say, it went pretty well. But then, something terrible happened. One of the key leaders, this guy by the name of Stephen, made some enemies. There were some people who really didn't like what he was saying. And so, instead of following the ways of working together like we would have done at MCC here, and trying to sort things out, they started making personal attacks on Stephen. And then inciting a bunch of people to lie about him. And so he got arrested and he said some pretty provocative things when he was asked to defend himself. And the next thing you know, the whole thing got out of hand and this kind of mob violence scenario happened and they killed him. They stoned him to death. And that kicked off this widespread persecution of the Jesus movement, who were suddenly regarded as troublemakers, even as they were completely innocent of any harm to anyone. I mean, they were scapegoated. They were turned into the enemy. Saul, also known as Paul, he got swept up in this. He was a very zealous character. He was zealous for God. And he was sure that these Jesus followers were enemies of the God that he worshipped, that they were dangerous, that they were going to ruin everything. And he started dragging people out of their houses and throwing them in prison. And we're told in Acts chapter 8, verse 1, Luke says, "Now on that day, the day that Stephen died, a great persecution began against the church in Jerusalem. And all except the apostles were forced to scatter. It was bad. It was chaos, fear, no due process. Innocent people were being killed. People had to flee their homes. They were grabbing what few possessions they could carry, and they were afraid for their lives and the lives of their loved ones. And no one was saying, yes, well, this is God's perfect plan unfolding. They were saying, let's get the hell out of here. Now, on that day, a great persecution began against the church in Jerusalem, and all except the apostles were forced to scatter throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, which, remember, was where Jesus said that they would witness in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and the uttermost parts of the earth. So did God cause a persecution to happen so that Jesus' words would come true? You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria. Did God say, all right, you've done great in Jerusalem, but I can see you're not really moving quick enough. You're not going outside of Jerusalem. You're all getting a little bit too comfortable. So I'm going to arrange for a persecution to happen so you'll be forced to move out into Samaria and Judea. Well, that could lead to some pretty dark theology, couldn't it? God up there in his heaven, moving people and events around like chess pieces on a chessboard, like the head game maker in the Hunger Games. Let's see what you do if I put a little fire under you. Well, I don't think that's what Luke is suggesting here. But he is suggesting that it was this terrible persecution that resulted in the spread of the good news further out beyond Jerusalem. Because the way that Luke's put his plot together, the very next thing that happens is that the gospel actually ends up in Judea and Samaria. Sometimes bad things happen, and somehow, unexpectedly, good things come out of them. In chapter 8, verse 4, we go on. Now those who had been forced to scatter went around proclaiming the good news of the word. It's just what they did. Philip went to Samaria. He spoke to people there, performed a whole bunch of miracles, and the whole city was amazed and joined the Jesus movement. So people in Samaria heard the good news. If the persecution hadn't happened, probably that wouldn't have happened either. Then God absolutely orchestrated this meeting between Philip and an Ethiopian eunuch, this royal official to the Queen of Ethiopia. And if you read Acts chapter, I don't know, what chapter's that in? Like 8 or something? I think it's in 8 still. The Ethiopian eunuch continued on his way, and he ended up taking the good news to a royal court back in Africa. None of this is part of a strategy session. The disciples didn't sit down and plan a vision day. Circumstances just overtook them. Terrible, terrible circumstances. They fled for their lives, and somehow it led to Jesus' followers being witnesses to Jesus to the uttermost parts of the earth. Africa. Life is mysterious. God is mysterious. The way that Luke tells his story, God did intervene at times and orchestrate events. If you were here last week, you would have heard about the story of Cornelius, the Roman centurion, who was visited by an angel and told to go and get Peter to come and speak with him. And so Cornelius sent these messengers to travel the 50 k's to where Peter was staying. And at the exact time that they arrived at Peter's town, Peter had this vision that overturned his long-held beliefs about who he could and couldn't associate with. And so by the time these messengers arrived at the gate, he was ready to go with them. Now that is a divine appointment. I mean, the way that that story is told, that was absolutely orchestrated. That was divine intervention. And then there's Paul's, he gets called both. Then there's his story. He's breathing murderous threats against the followers of Jesus. He's on his way to Damascus to arrest them when God intervenes. There's this bright light, voice from heaven. Saul is blinded, has to be led to someone's house. And then in another kind of meanwhile back at the ranch, Ananias, a Jesus follower, is told that Saul had this vision of a man named Ananias who came and prayed for him and healed his blindness. Well, I mean, what's Ananias going to do? I guess he could have stayed home and eaten his cornflakes, but I mean, he went, you know. It was this another sort of divine appointment orchestrated by God. I've had the very occasional divine appointment, maybe 4 or 5 times in my 60-something years, circumstances that are just so hard to explain any other way than life being mysterious, God being mysterious. 4 or 5 times maybe. But mostly life just happens. And the wrong turns and the twists and turns, the stumbles and falls somehow brought me here. And I'm very happy to be here. Jesus said that his disciples would be witnesses to Jerusalem, to Judea and Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the earth. And somehow they were. Acts 11, the bit that we heard tonight. Now those who had been scattered because of the persecution that took place over Stephen went as far as Phoenicia, Cyprus and Antioch, and they spoke the message to no one but Jews, their own little ethnic group. But there were some from Cyprus and Cyrene among them who came to Antioch and began to speak to the Gentiles too, proclaiming the good news of the Lord Jesus. You see, when they fled from persecution and took the good news with them, some Jesus followers just took it to their own ethnic group, but others crossed ethnic boundaries and they took the good news about Jesus to other people groups as well. And so this witness to the uttermost parts of the earth that started with Peter having his long-held beliefs overturned through visions and angels and miracles of timing, continued in just a very ordinary, non-miraculous way with people fleeing a persecution, settling in a new town, and then just talking with their neighbours over the back fence. I don't know how any of this works. I don't really know the answers to my questions. I don't know how life works. I don't know this mix of the ordinary and the extraordinary, the miraculous and the monotonous. Life is mysterious. I don't know how God's plan works. God is mysterious. I don't know how much of our lives is predetermined by some sort of outside divine force and how much of life happens because of what I make of it. I just know that all the events of my life have got me here. The choices I made, the opportunities I took up, the plans that I made that worked out, the rare, seemingly miraculous event, and also the wrong turns, the stumbles and the falls. All these things have taken us to where we are now, to here and now, sitting here in this building, online, wherever you are. However it happened, here we are. Life is mysterious. We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know where our lives are heading. And that very fact should make us relieved. It should keep us humble. And it should give us hope. Because if you're someone who believes that God has a plan for your life, and somehow you missed it, and now you're living some sort of inferior plan B, well, I hope you're relieved to know that really you can't mess up God's plan. The good news spread to the uttermost parts of the earth, regardless of whether the early Christians followed the vision statement or not. It happened because of their actions, and it happened despite their actions. But it happened. Not knowing where life is going to take us should also keep us humble, because we're not in as much control as we think we are. Your wealth, your health, your career, your family, none of those guarantee security in life. At any moment, things could go pear-shaped. Sometimes our successes lead nowhere, and sometimes our failures lead somewhere. So don't get too cocky. Not knowing where life is going to take us also should give us hope, because our future is not locked in by our past. No matter what's behind us, you don't know what's in front of you. And if things have already gone pear-shaped, if you look back on your life and think, what a disaster. I mean, life just did not turn out the way I planned. If that's you, then hear this. You don't know what's around the corner, or the corner after that. So hold on. Do what you have to do. Stay faithful. Take the next step. And the next step. There might be some wrong turns and stumbles and falls, but life may take you down a path and lead you somewhere that you never imagined that you would be. And you don't want to miss that.